The Broncos head back east once again, this time to try and surprise a stumbling Ravens team that will be looking for a dominant win over an unraveling Broncos squad. Hey everyone, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button and the like button. Because if you don't like it, what are you even doing here? Seriously, please subscribe. MHR Live. Thank you. Hey Broncos Country, I'm LLV. I am LLV. But I'm also Lori Lattimore Volkman, and this is the Roundup. See, it's been one of those kind of weeks. It's a crazy, stupid, I can't even remember my name kind of week. Because it has been a week of stupid talk in Broncos country, as we seem to be far more concerned with who's attending Russ Wilson's birthday party and what that means for his status in the locker room. After an embarrassing loss to the Carolina Panthers on the road last week, where Wilson and the Broncos offense couldn't buy a decent drive, Mike Purcell was seen walking off the sidelines and launching into a verbal attack on the quarterback. While the head coach pretended he had something to say on his headset that's not connected to anything, so he could deny knowing what was said. Purcell had every right to yell at Wilson, who only had 142 yards passing, 3 sacks, and just 1 touchdown in garbage time. Obviously, the team is frustrated, and no one can blame the defense for being pissed.
No, I think the chemistry with this group is still great. And I think like when you just put as much as you do into it week in and week out, you don't get the results, like it could be frustrating. So it's frustrating.
Yeah, there's been talk this week somewhat about the Mile High Miracle. I feel like the last time when they went out to Denver last year, there was more chatter about it just because they were going back out to Denver.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, it was something.
As everyone is watching, you can only imagine how frustrated guys are when they're the ones out there, trying to put in the work and find ways to win football games. And some of that spills over. And I had a chance to talk to Mike. Haven't had a chance to talk to Russ yet, but. Those types of things happen in the game, and I haven't seen it. I don't know exactly what's going on. I just heard about it, but Mike means well. Obviously, Russ is an amazing player, an amazing guy, and things just aren't clicking. For us as a team, not just on one side of the ball. And so we're talking about playing the game, and so those things are gonna happen.
Of course, that made the Broncos immediate meme material, and allowed all chatter to devolve into personalities rather than football. And that's what we've been doing all week. Like it often does when a team is losing. Hey, great job, Broncos PR and Mike Kliss. So at 3-8 and the bottom of the AFC West, the Broncos are heading back to the East Coast time zone to take on the 7-4 Ravens in Baltimore. Despite the Ravens' offensive and defensive inconsistencies, which led to a 1-point loss to the Jaguars last week, this is no time for the Broncos team to be dividing. If they're going to have any shot at putting a winning product on the field and having at least a little momentum going into a very long offseason, they need to stick together and figure this out. And that means figuring out how to score. Because as much as Nathaniel Hackett is to blame for poor preparation and bad play calling, Wilson is not without fault, and there's legitimate concern over his ability as quarterback.
Week 12, Russell Wilson, it's bad, y'all. The film is as bad as I would have thought. I think the nicest way I can put it is that Russell Wilson really looks like almost like a funhouse mirror of what he was. And what that means in a gentle way is that the explosiveness, the change of direction, the playmaking ability, it's just not there. It's not on the film. He can't separate. In addition, I think there are some bizarre decision-making elements, whether it's turning down throws, not throwing throws, the vision, not seeing things, throwing the ball out of bounds when there are easy first downs in front of him. Some of the footwork, just shockingly sloppy, a massive amount of wasted movement. but there are still some elements. There's like an outline. You can still kind of see flashes occasionally, but it's nowhere near. It's not even breathing the same air as consistency. Really, there's no clear, clean, big plays. Everything is just kind of like a bizarre clusterfuck. It really is. There's no nice way to put it.
There's rightfully a ton of criticism for Hackett and Wilson and this entire offense. And I don't pretend to know how to tell them to do their jobs, but they both need to do their jobs. Call a decent game, find an open receiver, move the ball down the field. Lots of coaches and players do this every week. Why do we have such a hard time? Hackett, come up with an actual game plan, not just a bunch of plays that you seem to like. The Ravens have a strong interior line, but a so-so pass rush from the edge. Get Wilson out of the pocket, use play action to set up the run game, and make this work. And for the love of all things orange and blue, no more deep balls on 3rd and 5 and runs up the middle on 3rd and 20. I can't take it anymore. Wilson, scan the field. Move out of the pocket. Quit taking stupid sacks. Look for the open guy.
We heard Nathaniel Hackett talk about it a couple of weeks ago. It's important to just get that first down, then we get rolling. And it's kind of funny to say just to get rolling, but that's so important. And in the first half, the Broncos just could not throw the ball. With 4 minutes and 42 seconds left, Russell Wilson had 10 passing yards. As a team, because Russ was sacked a couple of times, the team had -1 passing yards. It was the passing game that really held the Broncos back.
One of the best conversations on what's wrong with this team and how to fix it comes from RG3 on The Rich Eisen Show.
So I just think if you go back and you look at what Russell has done well over the course of his career, it's not drop back passing. He's never been that type of quarterback. He is more of an off-rhythm guy when he gets into the pocket, and yes, his height does have something to do with that. But a couple things he has done extremely well over the course of his career is RPOs and play-action shots. So what that means to me is that the Broncos have to find a way to develop their running game through the rest of this year, and then obviously in the draft or free agency next year, bring in some guys that will mimic what Russell was able to do with Marshawn Lynch, Robert Turbin, and those gaggle of backs that he had in Seattle. That's going to allow some pressure to be taken off of him because he's never been a rhythm and timing guy. 3-step, 5-step, 7-step, like Hackett had with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay for a few years. That's not his game. So they have to go back, watch the tape from the last 10 years of what Russell did in Seattle, cherry pick 10 to 15 concepts that you're like, all right, he sees this really, really well. I wasn't his coach. I don't really know him that well, but this coach knew him, and he was with him for an extended period of time. Let's go run those concepts because as a coach, the main thing you have to do is put your players in position to be successful, not put them in your system and tell them to go run your system. Even though he says his confidence never wavers, it looks like his confidence is wavering in the way that he's playing. So I think that's what the coaches have to go do because they have no choice. They got to make Russell work.
But if the QB is feeling his age and decline, he's not admitting it.
Everybody wants to win. We all want to win. And nobody wants to win, more than me and this team and what we want to be able to do.
There's a lot of noise this year that you're washed up at 34. Do you feel like you're washed up at 34?
I don't even respond to that. I think that at the end of the day, I know who I am as a player. I think that also too, I feel better than ever. I'm getting better mentally and physically every day. I've obviously, I had some tough stuff this year with the shoulder and lat and everything else. You battle through it, you play through it, you play ball, and we got a long ways to go. I'm excited about what's ahead with this football team. You just keep working, you keep believing, you keep climbing, and you know that you're going to come on the other side of it and break through it all. And so that's what I'm looking forward to.
How was your rest this week or a couple weeks from now? How important is it to get Jerry?
Obviously, this will be the defense's biggest test, as it has to contend with Lamar Jackson. Personally, I'm expecting a blowout loss from the Broncos, unless the defense can capitalize on some early mistakes by the Ravens offense, namely turnovers that the defense can score with. Because let's face it, the Broncos offense is not scoring. At least not enough. Because if we're relying on the Broncos offense to win, it ain't happening. Earlier this week, I spoke with Bo Smolka of the Believe in Ravens podcast. And he seems to think if the Broncos can score 18 points in the fourth quarter, they can beat the Ravens. And I told him there's not a chance because we can't score 18 points in a game.
Look, they've played 2 games since they came out of their bye, and they've kind of scuffled in both of them. Those teams were 11-0. The Ravens are 7-4. They've blown 4 of those games, including the one at Jacksonville, where they just, the previous 4 games, it looked like the defense had figured it out. They weren't scoring a ton, but they finally were finishing games. And then Jacksonville goes on this run, and the defense collapses again. So, it's been flabbergasting for the players, for the coaches, for fans, for us who cover the team.
The key for Denver will obviously be trying to keep Jackson at bay and not allow the run game to run them over or wear them down, which is hard when the offense is never on the field. But that will be the goal. And if by some chance the Broncos can hang with the Ravens until the fourth quarter, Bo does see an opening for this Denver team.
I will say this, where the Broncos can be in the game in the fourth quarter, they absolutely have a chance.
At least we can say that whatever happens on Sunday will not ever be as soul-crushing as that playoff loss to the Ravens in double overtime in 2012.
Yeah, there's been talk this week somewhat about the Mile High Miracle. I feel like the last time when they went out to Denver last year, there was more chatter about it just because they were going back out to Denver.
Sure.
But yeah, it was something.
Broncos country, it is depressing covering this team right now. It's depressing watching this team right now. Such high hopes before the season and such low depth during the season. But don't lose faith. It can't stay this bad forever, can it? Can it? Let's ride, I guess.
I don't know what they're going to do. Ride it out?
Now stay tuned for my full interview with Bo Smolka from Believe It Ravens. It's a great insight into how the Broncos might sneak out a win this weekend. Thank you everyone for joining us. This is the Roundup with Lori Lattimore-Volkman. And today I have a guest, Bo Smolka. I'm going to say that again. Bo Smolka with... It's hard to say your name together, isn't it?
Well, I don't have any trouble, but I have a lot of practice.
Yeah, Bo Smolka with the Believe It Ravens. And we are going to talk about the Broncos-Ravens matchup. Thank you so much for joining us, Bo.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
All right. So I don't know if you've been following the news in Denver, but we are apparently far more concerned about Russ Wilson's birthday party than we are figuring out how to beat the Ravens. So I'm going to ask you to help us out. How did the Jaguars do it? And can the Broncos possibly do that too? Or are we hopeless?
Well, if you can score 18 points in the fourth quarter, which the Ravens have allowed teams to do a lot this year, then maybe.
No, we can't score 18 points in a game.
Well, then that might be
we have 4 quarters and we can't do it.
Well, the Ravens, look, they've played 2 games since they came out of their bye, and they've kind of scuffled in both of them. The offense hasn't looked that good, so I'm not expecting the Ravens to throw up a bunch of points either. But it's been shocking this year to see this Ravens team collapse the way they have in 4 games. They are one of 4 teams in NFL history that has led by at least 2 scores in their first 11 games. The other 3, and I can't remember off the top of my head now which the 3 are, but the other 3 at this point in the season led by 2 scores in their first 11 games. Those teams were 11-0. The Ravens are 7-4. They've blown 4 of those games, including the one at Jacksonville, where they just, the previous 4 games, it looked like the defense had figured it out. They weren't scoring a ton, but they finally were finishing games. And then Jacksonville goes on this run, and the defense collapses again. So, it's been flabbergasting for the players, for the coaches, for fans, for us who cover the team. But if the Broncos can, I will say this, where the Broncos can be in the game in the fourth quarter, they absolutely have a chance.
Well, do you think it's more of a factor of the defense, the Ravens defense falling apart, or the offense just not being able to capitalize on its opportunities?
Well, in most of these games, it's been the defense falling apart. I mean, it goes both ways, right? You have to have both. For example, in the one game, if they convert a 4th down, I think it was against the Dolphins, then the Dolphins don't even get the ball back, and then they can't get a long bomb touchdown that tied the game or whatever. In the Bills game, the offense throws an interception and down near the goal line, and the Bills get the ball, and they can go down and score the game-winning touchdown. In the Giants loss, Lamar Jackson had a bad turnover late in the game, and that led to that one. This one here, the Ravens took the lead with 2 minutes left. The defense goes out on the field with a 27-20 lead, 2 minutes left. This is where they're supposed to stop the other team. and they had Trevor Lawrence in 3rd and 25. And then they completed or 3rd and 21 rather. They completed a 16-yard pass, which set up 4th and 5. They converted the first down, and they marched right down the field on the Ravens defense. So in this one specifically, it was on the defense. I think in several of them, the defense hasn't closed it out. I mean, the offense has had its issues at times, but the defense has not closed out these games.
Would you say it's mostly on the secondary? Like, should our tactic be to go after Marcus Peters? Because he seems like kind of the weak link there.
It's interesting in the Dolphins. It's funny. We sit here and we compare these absolute epic collapses. In the Dolphins collapse, that was different because both Humphrey and Peters were out that game. So they had a rookie cornerback on both sides. They had a rookie safety playing who was still kind of figuring it out. Marcus Peters looked susceptible in the Jacksonville game. There's no doubt about it. He looks a step slower than he had been. And Trevor Lawrence had no hesitation picking on him. The other issue is right now the Ravens are comfortable with 2 cornerbacks. The problem is they're often playing 3, and the question is who is that third? Marlon Humphrey's been playing really well. They prefer to have him play more in the slot. They like him to be physical near the line of scrimmage, and he can be an impact player in the slot. The problem is if you move him and play him in the slot, who's playing outside him? If it's not, he's usually on the other side of Peters. This past game was Brandon Stevens, who was a safety / cornerback who also got kind of exposed in this game. I will say they have their rookie safety, Kyle Hamilton, their top draft pick, who had actually been playing a lot of slot as a safety. It's kind of a different look for him, but he'd been doing it well. He missed the last game at Jacksonville with an ankle injury. He's practiced this week. I think he'll play. If he plays, they will probably use him a lot in the slot, and then Humphrey to the outside. But to your point, I think teams are not scared of Marcus Peters, and I think they will attack him when they can. He's a gambler in general. He likes to kind of bait quarterbacks into mistakes so he can make a big play. But he also seems to, I don't want to say take plays off, but it just looks like he gives up on a play sometimes, and a receiver gets behind him, and that's that. So. And Trevor Lawrence had no hesitation going after him. So that's something the Ravens have to deal with. Peters has to deal with it too. I expect when you see Marlon Humphrey on the other side, you're probably going to look toward the other side of the field, and that's Peters.
And what about the pass rush? Because obviously, being able to hit those receivers downfield and take advantage of maybe a weaker secondary, you have to get the ball up. And Russ Wilson has not been doing that. He takes forever and takes a lot of sacks. Are we in danger of that too?
I think maybe. It's interesting because the Ravens pass rush was question number 1 this offseason. Who's going to rush the passer for this team? When they broke camp and their 53-man roster, they only had 2 outside linebackers on the team. Odafe Owe and Justin Houston. Well, they had the third, David Ajabo, but he was immediately headed to IR. So they began the year with 2 outside linebackers. Then they signed Jason Pierre-Paul. They've got Tyus Bowser back now, who was hurt in the last game of last season, and he tore his Achilles actually in the final game of the year. Just came back about 2 weeks ago. He's an impact edge rusher, and they're getting push inside. Their interior linemen are creating problems with pass rushing. That's Justin Matabike, Broderick Washington, and Calais Campbell. They're making an impact as pass rushers on the inside. So they would like to be able to blow up the pocket and force Russell Wilson. I know people say, well, Russell Wilson can extend plays, he can run in this, but their inside pass rush they are pleased with. The outside pass rush is coming on. They've been better in the last 4 or 5 games. Getting Bowser back has helped. Odafe Owe is the other first-round draft pick for this team, and he's quite frankly been a huge disappointment this year. I watched him in training camp, and I thought this guy is going to be dominant as a pass rusher. He has 1 sack all year and about 3 quarterback hits. He's just not been a factor. But they're getting better, and they have this rookie second-round pick, David Ajabo, who might play this week. He hasn't played yet. I don't know if we'll see him or not. But the pass rush has improved. I will say that in the past 4 to 5 weeks, it looks much better than it did early in the year.
Yeah. Well, you're right. I mean, I know the D line and that interior line is a huge strength. I mean, you've got Rokan and Calais. So you've got some big names regardless. And collapsing the pocket would definitely hurt the Broncos. To be honest, Broncos fans aren't very optimistic about this game at all. But it's interesting because I've read a few comments from Ravens writers and fans, and they seem to be far more concerned about the Ravens and thinking it's going to be close and it'll be a battle, maybe a defensive battle.
I mean, this is what the vibe here is, that no one really quite knows what to make of this team. They can look so good. They looked so good for 3 quarters against Buffalo. They looked so good for 3 quarters against Miami. And then those games all fell apart. Then they looked so bad for 3 quarters against Carolina and barely won that game. They needed a turnover late in that game to hold on to win a home game right after the bye against a pretty bad Carolina team that's totally rebuilding. They looked pretty good for 3 quarters last week defensively, and then had a terrible fourth quarter. The offense and Lamar Jackson have just only looked okay. I mean, that's just all you can say about it. So there's not, I mean, I think the fans here, the vibe here is the Ravens are the better team, but there is no one in this town that looks at this team and says, wow, they are so invincible. They've got a lot of questions.
Yeah. As a fantasy owner of Lamar Jackson, I have watched this inconsistency all year with much dismay, I must say.
It's been tricky. I mean, and again, you talk about the birthday party. All the talk in Baltimore this week has been about this tweet he sent after the game on Sunday night, mouthing off at a fan. And he talked about it today. He finally spoke to the media for the first time all week today. And his mood was actually pretty good. I thought it might get a little testy, but he was good. And he just said, hey, I was bitter. I was mad after the game. It's the first thing I saw. I mouthed off. It was a bad reaction, my bad, and all that. But he hasn't been great this year. And he's been inconsistent with his throws. He certainly hasn't been helped by his receivers, who I think dropped 6 passes in the game the other day. And they haven't given him a whole lot of receivers to use. And that's one of the criticisms of this front office, is that they have time and time again, dating back to Joe Flacco, just not invested a lot in the wide receiver position. And then they tell Lamar Jackson, go win this game. And he looks around and he's got Demarcus Robinson, who is basically, with Rashad Bateman out, became their number 1 receiver. But they got him as a low budget deal in the offseason. Rashad Bateman, their number 1 draft pick 2 years ago, was expected to be that number 1 receiver, and he's hurt. Mark Andrews is the guy. I mean, he's the tight end. If you want to beat the Ravens, you stop Mark Andrews. He's been banged up a little bit, but he'll be out there. And he and Jackson have been like 1 and 1A since they came to the league together. They have such great chemistry. That's who Jackson's always looking for on 3rd down and pretty much every other down. But their receiving core is not great, and they didn't help him with drop passes. So that is all factored into Lamar Jackson's numbers if you're a fantasy owner. And then if they get the lead, they're just going to run the ball. And then Jackson might only throw 14 times.
Yeah.
That's how they want to play. They do not want, I mean, if Lamar Jackson's throwing 45 times, then something's wrong, because that's not how they want to play.
Yeah. And it's good that you bring that up, because I was going to ask, because I noticed, just looking at the stats last game, those first 2 drives were inside, not just the red zone, but inside the 10 or inside the 12, 3 incomplete passes. So is that a lack of receiver talent? Is it bad throws? Is it just bad luck? Is it the defense? Is it Lamar Jackson?
I think yes, and yes. I mean, Mark Andrews dropped one in the end zone. Now they made up for that because Gus Edwards scored right after that. Josh Oliver, the tight end, was open in the end zone down the middle in about a 8-10 yard pass play, and Lamar Jackson overthrew him by just a little bit. But some people say Josh Oliver dropped that one. It would have been a great catch, and Lamar Jackson has to make a better throw because Oliver was open. But this has been the problem for this team. You talk about why they didn't win the game on Sunday. They could not score touchdowns. They get down inside the 25-yard line. They get down inside the 10-yard line, and things just fall apart. They try to run, and they get a yard, and then Lamar Jackson throws incomplete. Now it's 3rd down. They don't get, and then they're bringing Justin Tucker on to kick 3 short field goals. So that game on Sunday, right away and early in that game, they could have easily been ahead by about 27-3, and they had 3 field goals where they could have had touchdowns, and that came back to bite them. So they've talked all week this week about being better in the red zone, being more productive, getting touchdowns. Demarcus Robinson dropped one in the end zone on him. It was a tough catch, but a number 1 receiver is going to make that sliding catch in the end zone. So that was one got away from him. So finding touchdowns is the thing for them. They haven't done it enough, and it really, really cost them against Jacksonville.
Well, the Broncos defense is obviously the best part of our team, and the secondary is top notch. The pass rush has taken a dip since we traded away Bradley Chubb, and also some of our players have been hurt, our top pass rushers, but they've still held their own for the most part. but the run defense has been showing its cracks. And so is that, how are my sense for the running backs has been, it's Lamar Jackson's the number one rusher. So, great if Kenyon Drake or Gus Edwards can get a few yards, but do you anticipate that maybe the Ravens will look at the Broncos and go, the way we win this is we run the ball?
I mean, that's the way the Ravens should look at it every week. But Ronnie Stanley probably won't play, excuse me, the Ravens Pro Bowl tackle. So that's a big factor. I mean, he missed all of last year, came back for about a month, and he had been looking good. And then he got kind of rolled up on Lamar Jackson, kind of rolled up his ankle in a sack situation against Carolina. He didn't play last week. He practiced a little bit this week. He was not out there today. I expect he won't play. So that's a big factor for their pass offense. He's missed other games, so they have a guy, Patrick McCary, who would probably step in at left tackle. But this team wants to win by running the ball. That's where they're best. And maybe it's Lamar Jackson. Maybe it's Gus Edwards. Maybe it's Kenyon Drake. They won't have J.K. Dobbins again this week. He's still on injured reserve. And John Harbaugh, he just returned to practice, and John Harbaugh confirmed this morning that he's not going to play. But, they can run the offense they want to run. They'll mix in the pass, but they will establish it on the ground with Edwards and with Drake. Drake's been a funny one because he's had a couple of great games, and he's had a couple of games where he's like 12 carries for 8 yards. Gus Edwards missed a couple of games, but he's back to looking like he was, and he's like a 240-pound bowling ball. And if he gets going, he's a hard guy to tackle. But it does. You're right. The running game runs through Lamar Jackson, whether it's read option plays. They'll sometimes bring Devin Duvernay, a good wide receiver who's dangerous as a runner. He'll come around on a jet sweep, and some of Lamar Jackson's biggest runs this year have come when they fake the jet sweep to Duvernay, because that gets the defense moving laterally, and Jackson keeps it and takes off up the middle. That's been a play that's worked really well for them. But Jackson's often going to be their leading rusher. That's how it is, and I think they will definitely try to establish the ground game.
Which they should. I mean, that is the weakest part of the Broncos defense. So I'm sure Harbaugh, he's a smart one. What's the mood like, the vibe for your offensive coordinator, for Greg Roman? I get the sense that he's not well liked, but maybe that's just recent angst.
He has been a lightning rod here for the whole time he's been here. People will credit him for the success of the running game. They'll blame him for the lack of a passing game. They will crucify him for playoff losses. When they've lost in the playoffs in the early rounds here, these 4 years he's been here, he has been target number one. There's no doubt about it. And so, in fact, this week word came out that Stanford is interested in interviewing him for their head coaching job. And that's created a lot of noise around here. And frankly, a lot of fans are like, good, go. But I don't know what the feeling is in the building. But he's a big time lightning rod for criticism here. The gist of it is he's a really good architect of a running game. I think the jury is still out whether, if they need to, can they win a game that is a shootout? And that comes down to Roman's calling. It comes down to Jackson. It comes down to the receivers that they have. Can they go toe to toe with Patrick Mahomes in a game like? I think most people think they cannot. That's somewhat on Roman and somewhat on the personnel that Roman has to work with. The biggest problem I have with Roman this year, and I would be willing to bet you right now that the Ravens at some point Sunday will get a delay of game penalty. They're tied for the league lead in delay of game penpenalties. They seem
Who are they tied with? It's got to be the Broncos.
I'm not sure off the top of my head, but they get one almost every game. They're all against Jacksonville. They could have had 5 each. They nearly had them on back-to-back plays in the red zone. They seem to get plays in late. Lamar Jackson last week, 3 or 4 times, he's clapping his hands, get the snap off. They get it down to 0.001. And Greg Roman was asked about it yesterday, and he made it sound as if part of that is by design. The longer we run our play clock down, the fewer plays the other team can run. But a lot of people are saying, I don't know about that as a reason, because they just look discombobulated sometimes. Game plays are rushed. They're getting personnel on late. They're getting the calls in late. John Harbaugh's admitted it. Lamar Jackson said as much today. So that's another thing. People look at Greg Roman like, what are you doing? Get these plays in quicker. But he's been a lightning rod around here for a long, long time, or 4 years he's been here. There's no doubt about it. So When the offense is going well, he does get credit, but when the offense is not going well, he is hammered around here.
Which this year it's not going as well, is it?
Correct.
How's his relationship with Lamar Jackson? Like, do they work well together as a coach or as a quarterback and coordinator?
I mean, I think they do, but they clearly have some communication problems, because if they were communicating better, then they wouldn't have all these scrambles to get plays in and on time. They say all the right things, but I think they obviously are having some kind of disconnect in terms of getting these plays in and operated at the right time. So, that's part of it. James Urban is the quarterback's coach who works more directly with Lamar Jackson. But, Roman, it's funny because people asked Lamar Jackson today about the Greg Roman rumor to Stanford, or not rumor. John Harbaugh confirmed he's talked to Stanford, but they said, "Hey, do you have any comment about?" And Jackson, to his credit, kind of chuckled and he said, "Look, I don't know anything about it, but believe me, this week I am staying off Twitter. I don't know anything about it." So, but it was funny. But he's, like I said, Greg Roman he and Jackson, they've worked together now 3 years, and Jackson, to his credit, Jackson has thrived under Greg Roman. There's no doubt about it. This is an offense built for Lamar Jackson. Right. So a lot of what Lamar Jackson's got done is done because he has Greg Roman calling the things. And he had Colin Kaepernick, who was in San Francisco, and he's got this offense that he likes to run, and it's worked well for Greg Roman. It's worked well for Lamar Jackson most of the time. But they do have this. They're having some kind of on the field disconnect sometimes, because the rhythm is not always right.
Right. So for you, what will it come down to more, the Ravens offense or defense performing well to get the win on Sunday?
I think it'll come down to the offense. I think the offense has to operate. I think they have to be, because I guess by saying that, I'm saying I think I fear the Denver defense a lot more than I fear the Denver offense, and maybe.
You're a good man.
I just think they have to be able to win that. They have to be able to beat the Denver defense. Lamar Jackson has not played great. He has to avoid turnovers, which he's generally done lately. But they've got to be able to move the ball, and they do have to be able to move the ball through the air and on the ground. He didn't throw it great last week, but like I said, he was not helped by his receivers dropping so many balls. But I would put it more on the offense. I think the defense, they have a lot of, if the defense is good at anything this year, it's coming back after a game where they gave up an epic collapse. And they've done it 4 times now. So they have experience with that, and they've generally done well with it. But I do think it's on the offense more than the defense to kind of dictate the game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as a Broncos fan, I fully anticipate an epic collapse from our offense. So I don't think you'll have to worry about it too much, but I do agree that it would be your offense beating our defense to ensure a victory.
Well, really, in the last, so Mike Macdonald's the new defensive coordinator here in Baltimore. It's his first year. He was here years ago. He was here rather for about 7 years. Left last year to go to the University of Michigan under Jim Harbaugh. Came back as a defensive coordinator this year. And the sense is, it took a while for things to kind of develop. Plus, Marcus Peters missed the first couple of games. Tyus Bowser was out. They hadn't signed JPP yet. Things were still, it felt like over the last month, this defense has figured it out. And then that's what was so surprising about the collapse last week. But for 3 quarters, they were really good in that game. So I would say in the last 4 games, the Ravens defense has played really well for all but 1 quarter. So it's a better defense than it was 2 months ago, without question. So I think I'm confident the defense has it figured out. The question is, can the offense execute? Because that's been inconsistent.
So what would be your score prediction for this game? I
have the Ravens. I went on my show earlier. I picked the Ravens to win 27-16. I think they're going to put some points up. They're not a team that's going to put up 40 on anyone, I don't think. But I do think the Ravens around here, I'll say, I was driving around today, going to the practice and so forth. A lot of people expect this to be a low scoring game in the teens, both teams, 17-12, 19-13 kind of thing. I think the Ravens are going to find a way to score. I have a sense they're probably going to get a defensive short field. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I've predicted that a couple of different times this year, but I do have that. What do you have?
I mean, it's funny. I've been so sarcastic and hyperbolic with my scores on all the shows and things I've done. But realistically, I actually like your score. I think, I definitely think the Ravens are in the 20s, high 20s, mostly because I feel like our defense, which has been so strong, is getting tired. And I don't have any confidence that our offense can help them out and keep them off the field. And so when they're chasing Lamar Jackson around and they're running down the field and they're doing this, just constantly with only a couple minutes break, I think they're going to get worn down by that fourth quarter, maybe even the third quarter. So I see the Ravens being able to put up several points. So 27 is good. To be honest, if the Broncos got 16 points, I'd be thrilled. I want to see it. I would just like us to score a touchdown, like more than one in a game, maybe even one. So I don't really honestly see how the Broncos can win this. It's been such a collapse in the, just over each week. It seems like it kind of gets worse and worse. And we hear the same things from the coach and the same things from the quarterback, and nobody seems to change anything. Nobody kind of gets fired up to really make a difference. And so I really just hope the Broncos offense comes out and can move the ball down the field and get some scores. But to not just piggyback on your score, I'm going to go 30-14.
All right. You're more optimistic than people around here. I'll tell you that. But I will say, so the formula the Ravens want is exactly what you said. They want to get the lead and run it down your throat in the second half. It's what they did all year in 2019, that 14-2 season. It's what they did against Tampa Bay and New Orleans. They got those leads in those two games, and those teams hardly saw the ball in the second half because the Ravens put these 8, 9, 10-minute drives together. And then they get off the field, defense comes on, or the defense comes on for 4 plays. The offense is back on the field, 9 more minutes. And by then the other team's defense is pretty much finished. And that's the formula they want to use. So if they can get the lead and open a lead and have it in the second half, you're going to see them just try to pound the ball. And that's how they want to play.
It's a good formula and it'll work 100%. So
if they play well, if Lamar Jackson turns the ball over a couple times and Gus Edwards fumbles like he did against Jacksonville, I mean, turnover is always going to be the wild card, but that's how they want to play. Right.
I mean, and it's funny because our defense, as good as it's been, it hasn't been a very good defense for turnovers. They haven't gotten the ball back much. They've been able to stop on fourth down, and they've been able to hold teams back and do a lot of that, but they have not, and they've gotten some sacks, but they haven't gotten fumbles and interceptions nearly enough. So they haven't been able to take advantage of that. And certainly when they have gotten them, our offense hasn't really been able to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, if the Ravens don't turn the ball over, then I don't see how the Ravens are going to lose.
Yeah, me either.
And you've seen them a lot more than I have.
Yeah. So my last question, were you covering the team for the 2012 double overtime playoff game?
Yes, I was covering the team, but no, I wasn't at the game. At that time, I was working for Comcast Sportsnet at that time. We had someone else out in Denver for that game. So I remember the game. I remember the game well. I was covering the team at the time, but I was not out what around here we call it the Mile High Miracle.
Yeah, we do too.
So no, I was not there. But the funny thing I know the people that were covering the game, many of them were in the elevator going down, expecting the game to be over, and on the elevator ride that pass happened, and then they realize the game's not over. They go back upstairs. But no, I was not there that day. But it was crazy. I had to be traveling that weekend, and I was actually in LA at a hotel. I'm a gymnastics judge, and I was waiting till the very last minute that I had to leave the hotel bar to get to the meet that I had to judge. And so I basically was driving for that pass, and then of course the kick. And I'm driving in LA traffic at night, don't know where I'm going, just so angry at the outcome. It's like, this is a bad combo. It was funny because that year, that Ravens team finished that year with they lost 4 of their last 5 games, and they were stumbling into the playoffs. And then Ray Lewis comes back and says, "This is my last ride," and all this, and all the players. Yeah. I remember being in the locker room after he said that, and all these players are saying, "Oh, we're going to win. We're going to go all the way for Ray Lewis." And I'm thinking, "Oh, that's a great sentiment, but you've won 1 of your last 4 games. I don't know. I don't see it." Then they won that game, and I'm thinking, you know what? I think they got something here. And then I thought they were going to win at New England after that win. I thought this is just crazy, and honestly thought they were going to win the Super Bowl. Then even I thought the 49ers were a better team, but I said there is something about this team now.
Yeah,
this is going to happen this way after that Mile High Miracle. But it was really, I don't know, you can go back and look at 100 games or whatever, but that really was one of the great NFL games of my lifetime. I mean, there were so many huge plays in that game.
Yeah.
And
a double overtime playoff game too is always
Yep. Yeah.
a great thing to watch.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, for Broncos fans, it's just soul crushing. And, for Peyton Manning to throw that and really, for Peyton Manning to be in that game and not be able to get the win after all the good he did. And then we have our cornerback, there's everything about Broncos fans just hate that game.
Well, it's like here around here, it's the we think of the year before that when Cundiff missed the field goal at New England in the playoffs when a chip shot, and here everyone talks about that one. And then the next year we go out and they went out and won at Denver, but
yeah,
that one you're talking about, everyone here talks about the year before when they blew it at New England.
Isn't it funny how fans like to lament the bad games sometimes more than celebrate the good ones?
Yeah, there's been talk this week somewhat about the Mile High Miracle. I feel like the last time when they went out to Denver last year, there was more chatter about it just because they were going back out to Denver.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, it was something. And I'm thinking, I think of that game. I'm pretty sure Justin Tucker and Josh Bynes are probably the only two players left on this team that were in that game. The rosters turn, it was 10 years ago, so the rosters turn over and so forth. But that was Tucker's rookie year. And the funny thing about that year was, remember, I just said Cundiff had blown the kick in the playoffs at New England the year before. They bring in this undrafted rookie kicker from Texas named Justin Tucker to compete with Cundiff. And then by the end of the summer, Tucker wins the job. And I remember when they decided to go with Tucker instead of Cundiff in the 53-man roster, so many people were nervous saying, I don't know, this team has legitimate Super Bowl aspirations and we're going to trust this to a rookie kicker. And then he goes and nails the game winner in double overtime. Yeah. And not to mention, he had to turn around and make that extra point after the Mile High Miracle, which it's like 4 below zero. There's no gimmies on that field.
Yeah, right.
So, but he was moxie all the way through, and he's been crazy good his whole career.
Yeah, but he's also on my fantasy team. Thank goodness he's been money the whole time.
you can't get better. He's the best there's ever been, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, he's great. He's great.
I mean, even the other day, they throw him out there for a 67-yard field goal. And when it left his foot, I thought it was good. I wasn't.
It was straight, but just a little bit short, right?
Straight, yeah, but it was short by about 3 yards. But when it left and I think if you're probably at the stadium, you probably could sense it wasn't going to have enough. But with the end zone shot that we had, it was definitely online. And I thought he took the same thing he did at Detroit when he made the 66-yarder, and he kind of takes an extra crow hop step back to give him a little more power. And he says it requires another like 1/10 of a second protection, and it's got to come out a little bit lower, but it was straight on. It was just like maybe 3 yards short, and it was outdoors. Maybe if it's indoors, it goes, and outdoors it didn't go. The wind was not really a factor, I don't think, but when it left his foot, and we asked John Harbaugh too on Monday, said, hey, did you think about a Hail Mary there? And he says, honestly, Tucker from 67, I think, is a better chance than a Hail Mary. And I don't think any other kicker any other team in the league would say that about their kicker, but he's totally right. But he was online and short by about 3 yards.
Yeah. I mean, a Hail Mary is definitely just total luck, but when you've got Justin Tucker, 67-yarder is probably a better than 50% chance, that you're going to get it.
I mean, during warmups, he'll frequently he'll kick 65-yarders. He might try a 70-yarder. And he'll usually come up short, but I've seen him make 70-yarders in warmups, and I've definitely seen him make 65-yarders in warmups. So I'm sure he was out there that day kicking, and whether he thought he had enough leg or whatever, but when it left his foot, I thought this is just I never sell him short. I mean,
right.
So I thought, oh my gosh, this is but it was a little short.
Yeah. Well, he's a great kicker. So,
I mean, he is, in the end,
if it comes down to him tomorrow, I mean on Sunday, then it's definitely.
I can't tell you how many times when we do these predictions in our games this year. I will say in a close game, give me Justin Tucker every time. I mean, they always have the better kicker. Yeah. And Denver's had a lot of good kickers over the years, but I will take Justin Tucker over any kicker in the league in a close game anytime. Yeah. And the other thing is that miss. The bummer about that miss on Sunday is he had a streak. I don't have it in front of me. I think it's 65. He had a streak of 65 straight made field goals in the fourth quarter or overtime. He was as clutch as you can be. And then he misses that, and there goes the streak. I'm like, well, that one shouldn't count. It was 67 yards.
You're right.
But, I mean, in the fourth quarter overtime, he's unflappable. So
yeah. We could always make the record, fourth quarter or overtime under 65 yards.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but he in a close game, he is a difference maker. There's no doubt.
No doubt. Well, Bo, it has been awesome to talk to you. I appreciate your time.
Too.
And may the best team win on Sunday.
We will see. That's how it always plays out, right? And so, the Ravens are the better team, but you got to be the better team that day.
That's right. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Great
Good
to talk to you.